Hey United Nations, my name is Jenna Burch. I am a 20-year-old young female and I am from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. You know, throughout my visits to Manitoba Reserves, I have seen the inequalities firsthand in the lives of the children who reside there. They don't have proper facilities to be educated in, and so the children are left run wild on these reserves where gambling and substance abuse plagues many First Nations families. Many young people resort to abusing substances that alter their perception and make them vulnerable to at-risk factors. Those include overwhelming addictions to substances such as inhalants, sexual exploitation, and suicide. Overwhelming addictions to substances lead youth on reserves to have to go to places that they don't want to go, and it forces them to make judgments that are not necessarily good to their safety. You know, 3 years ago, a man who owned a coffee shop in Winnipeg was going out to the South Beach Casino on the Broken Head Reserve in Manitoba to lure Aboriginal teenage girls with drugs and alcohol and money. My sister was one of those young ladies who was a victim. She later killed herself due to the emotional trauma of having to deal with that. You know, it does take a community to raise a child, but our government continues to oppress First Nations families in the INEACT and child welfare system. That was 3 years ago, and since then I have dedicated my time to help the voices of my peers and my people. I am now an advocate and an activist for children's rights, and I volunteer extensively in my community to combat the intergenerational effects that residential schools has had upon my people. You know, Article 24, paragraph 2C states that children on reserves deserve proper care and access to clean drinking water. Not only children on reserves, but all children across the world. When the swine flu epidemic arose in Manitoba, reserves asked for safety kits to reduce the spread of the virus. You know what the Canadian government sent? He sent body bags. No solution, just a cover up. The reserves then asked for clean water and functioning toilets in overcrowded houses. And what did the Canadian government do? Once again, the government covered it up the problem and sent slop buckets. Slop buckets that only tend to about four to five people, and they're overcrowded houses that house 20 people in reserves. Now that is no place to live. You know, children on reserves are living in third world conditions because of this. Back in 1907, 46 of Aboriginal children died in residential schools per year. And what did the Canadian government do? He got rid of the medical examiner position and fired him. The government has been doing this for years. It needs to stop. You know, he did make an acknowledgement to our peoples by saying sorry to us, but was there any solution? No, just a cover-up once again. You know, this has been going on for so long that we need to step up and rise above this. We need brighter, healthier children for a brighter Canada. You know, in Article 8.2, it says that if a child is cut off from their identity, it is the government's duty to help the child find it as soon as possible. There are northern reserves in Manitoba that recite the Lord's Prayer as if they were still attending residential schools. You know, many Aboriginal youth don't even have a school to go to. I know it's the law that you have to attend regularly until age 16. Many schools don't even have the funds to create culture-related programs in schools. They should have the right to a choice and be able to search for their true identity, not have to worry about money. Our land never used to be about money, so why do we need a paper telling us who we are? We don't need money to live, but since the government stole our identity, it needs to provide us with the proper resources to do so. You know, the intergenerational effects of the genocide that has happened in our country has impacted our children to the point of extinction. Look at how well I am pronouncing my words. I don't know my language. Our languages and traditions make us who we are. You know, and I really want to know who I am. Throughout the years, our language was maliciously beaten out of our souls and lost to the hallways of the schools that were supposed to keep our spirits safe. It is important to know what has happened in our past so we can move on and teach the next generation kindness and stop the cycle of oppression. You know, schools on reserves need adequate and stable funding to provide these basic human rights to children. Education facilities are run down by mold and years of wear and tear of harsh, cold prairie weather. You know, lots of my friends don't even have a grade 6 education education because the schools have been closed down for so many years due to these conditions. Many students have to move away from the reserve to further their education, but all that does for the young person is draw them further away from their families, from their identity, and from their traditions. Without proper spiritual education centers on reserves, a race that once ruled a whole continent will be extinct forever. Child welfare and the healthcare system on reserves in Manitoba need to have traditional spiritual approach instead of having a Western Euro way to dealing with things, to their facilities, because, the Anishinaabe peoples are spiritual beings. Many reserves that I've been to have elders, but, because of oppression, they're ashamed to come forth and share the culture with the Canadian government. The Canadian government needs to look at all people equally and provide sustainable resources so we as people can govern ourselves. We are not looking for a handout. Many Aboriginal youth are speaking up and recognizing this reality we have been born into. This is not fair. The treaties have been written so long ago. These treaties need to be rewritten immediately before our culture is legally gone. We were once bred like horses. We're not animals, we're human beings. We have 10 fingers and 10 toes. A government that has the money for tax breaks for the rich, but not for rebuilding and repairing healthcare facilities in decaying Aboriginal schools, is a government with the wrong sense of priority. All children in Canada have a right to proper education, and they have a right to feel safe. Since my sister has passed away, I've dedicated my time to help the voices and the peers of the people in the community. And when I say community, I say all of Manitoba. I have a lot of friends that come from every reserve, and they see me on TV speaking to the politicians. I'm an activist and I'm an advocate for children's rights, and I volunteer extensively in my community to combat the intergenerational effects that residential schools has upon my people. I have grown up in the child welfare system. I do not have a mom or dad, and I have never experienced love from my parents. I don't know my language and traditions. There are thousands more like myself, and we will not be silenced anymore. Knowing this information, I believe that there are too many violations of our rights as human beings. I'm currently going to Red River College in the Child and Youth Care Practitioner course. I am learning a lot about my heritage and the rights of a child in Canada. I also sit on United Way, Winnipeg's Youth United Council. Being a part of these committees inspires change within my circle of friends via Facebook and Twitter. My friends on reserve see the good I'm trying to accomplish, and they try to do the same in their communities. By 2020, 40% of school-aged children will be Aboriginal all across Canada. The government needs to do something because the cycle of oppression can no longer go on. We want our children to be proud Canadians and love themselves, so we can use our culture to bring back the peaceful image of this country. Thank you for your time. Peace!